Hello, Captain VFC here with another build video, and this one is quite significant because this is the first time I will be saying goodbye to these trusty paintbrushes and hello to an airbrush. Construction starts with the wings, strangely enough. This is just a simple bottom and top piece that are glued together, and the wings form the basis of the interior by having a floor which has the seat on, as we'll see later. The wings are being tidied up, and you will see plenty of that in this build, as this is a fairly dated tooling coming from 1967. There is an unboxing video that I did on this. For some reason, the interior of the wing says 1976 on it. Probably when it was retooled. I don't know why, well, not retooled, when it was re-released. Don't know why they would have wasted their time re-stamping it, but hey, that's what they appear to have done. I am brush painting the interior of the winged black. This is just where the gun ejection, the shell ejection ports are, and also the intakes in the wing roots, before then gluing the top and bottom together and keeping it clamped. Yes, I am aware that I said this was going to be an airbrush video, but I am certainly not wasting my time airbrushing the inside of a kit. I'm just not that way inclined. And the interior then is mostly a seat, a pilot seat. That's it. I say mostly. That is the interior. There's no wheel well detail as you saw, but the seat here goes on the centre of the top of the wing. The centre on the top of the wing, you know what I mean, on these little ridges, which just keeps it in check. There's not even an instrument panel. It is literally just a seat. The fuselage as well needed some tidying up. There are a lot of sort of ejection pins and just loose odds and sods all over the place on this kit, so every component needed a fair bit of filing and sanding, and as you can see, this rather odd construction method of putting the fuselages around. We'll see more on that later, but yeah, it's a little strange. Anyway, this kit comes with a pilot, and for once I decided to install them. So here I am painting them with olive drab, as well as the seat which they will sit on, before tidying them up with some other colours which you'll see shortly. And whilst they're drying, oh, see, here we go, RLM 70 black green. The engine which you briefly saw me working on there was so full of flash that the propeller blade would never have even gone in. So yeah, every part, as I say, every part in this kit needed a bit of tidying up, but I'm okay with it. I've made it before, I was expecting it, it's fine. And then Humbrol Acrylic 85 Black. This is just for the boots as well as the engine. Usually with the engine of an aircraft like this, I would go over it with some sort of chrome, like a gunmetal, to get a gunmetal-y sort of colour. I didn't. I just couldn't be bothered. Not going to lie, there's no excuse. Just simply couldn't be bothered in this instance. I was hoping this was going to be an easy build. It's a kit, like I say, I've made before. The colours are all basically the same, and therefore it just wasn't worth it. I just thought, let's worry about the airbrushing. Anyway, interior green. This is standard US interior green, painted on the sides of the fuselage and the headrest and things of the one bit that the interior is literally just that, just the seat. And you can see here, said I'd mention it later, the fuselage halves go around the wing, and I was just lining it up because it doesn't quite press against the sides as you would expect. So I was just lining up exactly where it's going to be so that I know which bits to paint. And the engine area as well, the inside of the cowling, was also painted at this time. Next we have another blast from the past with some Humbrol enamel paint. This is Matte 61 Flesh. This is because I do not have a flesh colour in my acrylic paint collection at the moment, and I do have, due to an admin error, a couple of tins of completely full enamels, so that was painted on the hands and the face before this beige colour, which is meant for things like Canberras, was painted on as sort of straps. Then the pilot was given a sticky bottom and stuck on his mount right in the centre of the wings. Now the awkward balancing act that is squeezing the main wing and the tail wing and the fuselage halves around each other in one swift motion before clamping and gluing. There is actually quite a lot of wiggle room on both the main wing and the tail. I solved most of it with filler, as we'll see shortly, but it took a little while to get that straight and was probably the most complicated bit of this build, actually. Now, we're going off book for a little while. We are putting the undercarriage up. It does not have an option for undercarriage up, which is a little strange because it does come with a stand, as we'll see shortly. So what I had to do was just cut the parts off and glue them in before I realised, of course, there was a massive gap around all of them, and this took quite a while to get right as well. A drop tank is supplied with a hole in the bottom, which is for the stand. However, pay close attention. You'll notice the stand disappears between me gluing it on here and a couple of shots time. And that is because I dropped the kit and it snapped off. And there was very little actual surface for it to stick to, so I just took it off. Also, just now I've taken the tail wheel off because I've, again, decided to do the wheels up. And had I been paying a bit... Well, I guess it's not been paying more attention. Had I really wanted to, I could have crafted a little bit of plasticard to look like the undercarriage leg, which I think protrudes a tiny bit on the Bearcat. I just couldn't be bothered. The point is the wheel isn't there. It's gone up. Filler time! Plenty of... this is the Revell filler because it's just what I had to hand. Plenty of that put on. On the tail, you notice there was a little bit on the tail surfaces. It was just a blemish I had to fill in. Anyway, primer sprayed from a spray can over the entire aircraft before we get to the airbrushing itself. Yes, like I say, this is my first kit that I've airbrushed. I did some testing on some spare kits just to try and get to grips with it a little bit and try and work out the settings. But here I am spraying Tamiya XF17, yes, XF17 Sea Blue all over the aircraft. And even though, if I'm going to blow my own trumpet, I think I did quite a good job on the airbrushing, despite, some obvious issues with it being my first time, I haven't worked out how to film it properly, so... Never mind. Oh, that was me dropping the box, because in case anyone's wondering, the airbrush is a Fengda FE183K, and there's a Fengda compressor that I was using as well. Now, onto the decals. These are, of course, Revell decals. They are not old Monogram ones or anything like that. However, this really long piece from just underneath the front of sort of where the pilot is, right down to the back, on both sides, decided to split in half. And in some ways it's good because it made it easier to navigate, but they were a bit fragile, so much so that I couldn't quite get them to line up, and here I am just tidying up the very obvious blue line that was between the divider of those on both sides, and also just again touching up the stars and other insignia as well. There are lots of stencils. Don't worry, I will spare you the pain of me putting all those on, but there are a lot of stencils for an old kit. Like I say, it's obviously redesigned. And I'm also making the stand. Now, in the instructions, this is the only part that it says to exclude, probably because it's got Monogram stamped in big letters on one side, the other saying F8F Bearcat. I quite liked it, and since this is something a little bit different, I thought I'd do it with the wheels up on the stand. And to make the stand look a little bit more exciting, I've painted the base in the same XF17 gloss sea blue. Sorry, not glossy blue, it's sea blue. It's not glossy at all. But anyway, painted it in the same colour as the rest of the aircraft, with the stand thing being in white. The stand thing? The vertical thing, the post. Should we call it a post? With the post and the letters being picked out in white. And you'll see shortly I also pick out the hyphens in red, as well as, of course, patching up this little bit here. Yes, I'm allowing myself to use a paintbrush for the tiny details, because that's normal. Anyway, the paint, by the way, the XF17, the Tamiya paint sprayed beautifully, and part of the reason for doing this aircraft in particular as part of my airbrush test is it's an easy colour to do, because it's just a very monotone looking aircraft, but also it's Tamiya paints, and I've heard good things about spraying them. Onto the varnishing stage. Now, this of course should be gloss sea blue. I've actually mixed gloss and matte varnish here to try and get a little bit of a satin sheen. I don't like it quite as bright. Yes, it's coming out quite thick. I didn't really move the airbrush to like the distance it should be. This was probably the weakest bit of the entire build apart from one. But again, like I said, it's just me trying to get familiar with it. The end result, you don't see all of the patchiness. I gave it a few coats. It did smooth out, and it's got the right sort of satin sheen for me. Moving on to the final details, things like the propeller blade tips. There is no locking mechanism. It says, it's got a spinning propeller blade. However, you just place it in the hole and that's it. And then the canopy. Also, notice just underneath the pilot, on this case on the port side, just in front of the one, there is a blue line. That is because, if I'm completely honest, full transparency, even though I didn't film it, I somewhat ballsed up the canopy and I had to cut it off. And when I glued it back down, I taped it down and the tape took a bit of the decal off on one side. I thought about replacing it with a spare. I didn't. Anyway, we're moving on to the end, putting the stand on. So I've drilled a hole in the bottom of the fuselage, and voila, here we go. One Bearcat. Right, anyway, moving on to a brief sort of overview. Do I recommend this kit? Absolutely. You know what, it's an old tool, but Monogram tools are still really good. As in, they make together nicely. The problems that I had with this were to do with the flash, and that is not a Monogram thing, that is due to the age of the kit thing. I think my decision to do the stand with the white, red, white was the right one. It was very, very nice. And you may notice that the aircraft is at a bit of an angle. That is deliberate. I just think it makes it a bit more dynamic than just, Bearcat on a post. And how about airbrushing? Well, honestly, I wanted to hate it. I wanted to go, oh no, hairy stick is always better. Oh, it's fine, yeah. What's the point in me changing? Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Like, way more than I thought I would. Spoilers, since I made the Bearcat, because, surprise, surprise, I made this a little while ago and it's just taken me a while to get the video done. I have airbrushed another aircraft, which I'm also really, really happy with. Yes, I have a long way to go before I'm going to be, airbrushing tiny people and things, but seriously, I liked it. Yeah, I'm thinking now, as standard practice for one colour aircraft, I will be airbrushing by default, and only if I want a really quick mojo build am I going to brush paint. But it is easy. As somebody who has never airbrushed a model before, I thought this was definitely the right choice of kit. And yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. So thank you very much for everyone who has made it this far through the video. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, it really does help. A notification bell if you want to be notified of my next video. Also, for those who have watched more of my content and are returning visitors, in addition to a massive thank you, you really don't understand how much I appreciate it. There are a couple more brush painted aircraft that I have made that are in this collection, so don't worry, I'm not abandoning brush painting. I still really like it. I'm still brush painting one at the moment of recording. There's also, as I say, at least one more airbrush one to come, so don't worry, it will still be the same sort of content as usual. I'm still an amateur and I'm still trying to find a shortcut where possible. If you want to watch me make these kits live, then I'm often streaming on Twitch. I try to do so once a week. The link will be in the description and is also on the card at the end. In the meantime, if you haven't seen another video before, there's a recommendation for you. Oh, and did I mention hitting subscribe? Also, Bearcats! And apologies for lack of history of the Bearcat, but that's what Google's for.